ahead and start recording. So thanks guys for joining us. We are well into our second series of Organizer Hangouts. I'm glad to see that we have such a diverse array of people from all the summits with us. So I think you guys know today we're focusing on communities and projects, how to work with our community partners and projects. So I have a little bit of a slideshow that we'll go through together. We have some information that Ben and I will share and remind you guys of some of the guidelines that we've already given. I know different summits are at different places. And then we'll just open it up for any questions or comments that you guys are facing with your summit. I know some summits are further along than others. So I know that there could be some awesome knowledge exchanging going on as well. So for example, I know Amazon is a bit further ahead than Zambia, who's, just kind of just starting out in the game. So this is a great opportunity to exchange between each other as well. So let me go ahead and screen share and tell me, guys, my screen. Okay. Great. Can people see my screen?
Yeah, we can see.
Great. So I like to show off these two pictures when talking about communities and partners, because the top one is a picture from when I did a community visit with, who all knows Noella on the line? Make some noise.
Yes.
Hello.
So for those of you who don't know, she's a longtime network member based in Arusha, Tanzania, and she did a lot of work to help set up our community there in Arusha for IDDS 2014. And this was one of the stakeholder meetings that we had with one of our most proactive communities, Legaruki, where our avocado oil project was based. This was months before the summit. And then at the bottom is a picture of someone who is on the call and some folks from the IDDS Zero Waste. So we have Pedro and some of the participants and projects came out. I think both are good examples of past summits that have done a really good job at working with community projects before the summit. And as you see the top picture, it's not always glorious. Sometimes it's just basic meetings, but it's good to remember what the outputs are and kind of why we're doing it. So speaking of that, I want us to go around and talk about first, why is this so important and what have been your experiences so far with communities and projects for your summit? Because like I said, I know some people are at different spots, so it might be helpful for each of us to just kind of go around, introduce ourselves by summit, and just share why you think this is so important and what has been your experience so far. So I might call out the summits in order of who's been working on this or whose summit is coming up soonest. So do we have any IDDS education folks on the line? I think we have Pedro.
That would be me.
Yeah. Pedro, do you want to share with us why you think this is so important and what your experience has been so far for your summit?
Just a moment.
I'll start with the experience so far. For this summit, we've had a less of successful experience as the past summit. For some reason, the fact that is now that the summit is going to be in Utah has been things more trickier. So getting.
Oh, sorry, Pedro. Can everybody mute their mic? It sounds like there's some background noise.
Yeah, I'm hearing someone else. I can't hear you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you. Pedro, go ahead.
All right. So I was saying this year the process has been slower and a bit less successful. So the reason for that is, we assume is because, I don't know, things in Bogota are crazier than in Cali, so people have less time to engage. So we've tried hard to include people from different perspectives. We have the university, we have the communities, we have a government agency, and schools and communities already talking. We were expecting to have more stakeholders, expand our reach from last year, but it hasn't been easier. So our experiences, we've matched what we did last year. We were looking to expand, but it hasn't been that easy. And the reason why we consider this important is because last year when we put in the mix academia, government, communities, public, and private sector, both projects and the kind of community that was built inside the IDDS was fantastic. So we know that the more people we can bring that will have a say or can benefit from what we do, the better the results in terms of projects, in terms of community building. So I would say that's our experience so far and what we think is important.
Mm-hmm. Anything that you're hoping, any questions that you're hoping we can address on this call that might be helpful for IDDS education at this point?
Yeah, well, one thing is, and it's probably even related to co-creation. There's this imaginary that everyone should be part of the process, but we know that not always is useful to have everyone being part of the process. So through experience, we're learning what stakeholders are important to have at each stages. So it will be great to hear from other people that had experiences bringing people together to a table to hear when and what stage of the process they've experienced had been useful to have a lot of people, less people from different perspectives, or people that bring just one.
Cool. So kind of who should be a part of the process and when?
Exactly.
Okay, cool. So we'll touch on that a little bit here, and then we can save some time for discussion of that later. Thanks, Pedro. Do we have any folks on the line from IDDS Botswana? We might not. I think Sunday was planning on joining. Carolina? Are you still?
Yeah, I'm here.
Awesome. Carolina, do you want to talk about why, from your experience as an IDDS participant or an organizer, why do you think communities and projects are so important, and kind of what your experience has been so far, what you think your team's experience has been?
Can you hear me?
Now we can.
Okay, good. So I think I could say more from my IDDS participant experience than I can say from my organizer experience, because right now, at least I'm at a phase with the organizing team where I'm not that engaged with the local community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you just muted. There you go. You're unmuted now. Say that again, Carolina. So you're talking about how it's important and how you haven't yet been engaged with the community.
Oh, okay. Right now, I haven't been that engaged with the community. And also, since I'm not a local organizer, it's quite hard. But as a participant, being engaged with the community made all the difference for me, in my experience. Especially because as a local participant, I ended up going back and helping build our project. But it's hard. I don't really have an organizer experience, I'd say, in this relation to it right now.
Great. And I know that Sunday is not able to be here, but he's also working on projects with Amy and Black for the Dakar community. But Carolina, did you have any questions that you're hoping we could address during the session?
Not formulated right now, no. I was hoping to maybe at the end see what.
That sounds good. I think you do bring up a great question of how to keep international organizers engaged and on the same page as local organizers. So I think that's still a valid point. But you're right, it's important to have our communities there. All right, who from IDDS Amazon? I know we have some folks on the line, a couple. Do you guys want to introduce yourself and kind of talk about why it's so important. Just give a brief recap of what your experience has been so far. Michael and Andre. Michael, I think you're on mute, and Andre, I think you are as well.
Andre, do you want to go first or should I?
May you go first?
You or me?
You?
Okay.
Okay.
My name is Michael. I am the co-lead instructor of IDDS Amazon. And so I guess I can agree with Pedro and Caroline in the two problems of when to engage the stakeholders and when it's the right moment, because we had also a lot of people in the beginning, and now it seems like because we have problems engaging them, they're slowly dropping out, and that was from the beginning of the process basically. But it's also helpful for us because then we can define ourselves better on who is taking which responsibility. And for the I agree with Caroline about not being the local organizer, and it's hard to keep up because, as for example, IDDS Amazon last two weeks ago, we had a permaculture workshop with the community as a pre-engagement before the summit, and Andre was there, and I personally had the feeling that I was missing something, and it's hard to catch up something like that because. Yeah, Andre, I guess you can tell more about what has happened. If you unmute your...
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's very important, Michael, what you said and what Pedro and Carolina have said so far. The workshop that we had before the summit was quite important because engaging with community is something that takes some time. So especially when you do not live there. I live in Brazil, but it's a completely different context compared to Pará, where IDDS Amazon is going to be. So I think it was very, very important to be there before the summit. And before the summit, only Deborah and Flavia, other two organizers, had been there to get to know. And I think the work Deborah has developed there, she has gone there, she has been there a lot of times, talking to the association and talking to the families. And this has been very important. I don't think the workshop we held 2 weeks ago would have been so successful if she hadn't been there before. So I think it takes a little time. It takes more time than just going there once or twice before the summit to really engage the community, and so that the summit will be very good to IDDS and also to the community. So this is very important in my opinion. This is very important to have this strong connection with the community before the summit. So that's my opinion. I forgot to introduce myself. I am a design facilitator on IDDS Amazon, and I work with environmental education and permaculture.
Great, thanks guys. So yeah, I think we'll continue on that thread of addressing the question of how can we keep organizers connected. I do want to share with the other summits on the line that IDDS Amazon is probably the furthest along in terms of community and projects, mainly because Deborah does live there right near the community. She's going there probably once a week, just out of her own pocket. It's a community that is very excited to have the summit. It's a really unique community. And so it has helped them kind of move forward in terms of the amount that they've been able to talk and even scope projects and have this workshop. And it's just such an open community. And so if you're looking for ideas or ways to engage with the communities that you're involved with or how to be scoping projects, Ben and I can help, but I really encourage ping the IDDS Amazon team. Several of them have been out there at different points as well, and they can talk honestly about some of the challenges and some of the ideas for best practices. Thanks, guys. So next up, IDDS cook stoves. We got a few representatives on the line. I'm excited, both here and in Uganda.
Hello, Agnes. Hello.
Hi, Agnes. We can hear you.
Hi. Okay. Sorry. Yeah. I'm Agnes. IDDS Cookstoves. I work with the Center for Research in Energy and Energy Conservation, based in Uganda. Maybe I'll just give a brief what we've done a bit, but I think Juliet is on the line. She'll give a better picture because she's the one directly engaged with reaching out to the communities. But so far, the little bit we've done, we've not, yeah, our summit is due for August 2016. The first thing we did around January was to visit some of the communities that are very near to the venue and just to do a brief introduction. Some households, because they'll be very relevant in really understanding user perspectives, what they want a really good stove to look like. So we visited a couple of households just to introduce them to the summit, what we'll be doing, and that we'll be coming back to them to engage them. So in the last, let's say, that was around January 20, this year. So in the last 2 months, we've not done so much. But I believe Juliet has a better update. But maybe from my side, a few things that come to my mind in terms of how to engage the community. I think it's to do with, I think Pedro, the last person is Andre, talked about like they've been able to do a lot of engagements, maybe on a weekly basis. But I think the challenge we have for IDDS Cookstove is that the venue is a bit further from where the local organizers are located. So it's a bit hard to do the let's say weekly engagement of the community prior to the summit. So I wanted to know a balance of how often is good enough to engage the community prior to the summit. What works for maybe some people who have done it before, because for us in this area it's really a first time. And then another one would be at times for some of our communities, the expectations are high when you start telling them about, oh, there's this summit, you want your input and things like that. How do you handle expectations of the communities that you're going to engage with?
That's a
Because the
great one.
expectations are really diverse. Yeah. That's it from me.
That's good. Thanks, Agnes. Agreed, because some people think we're coming to save the world, and we're not. But we're excited to be there. So did Juliet and Dan, do either one of you guys want to add, or both of you want to add to that as well?
Hi, everyone.
Hi, Juliet.
Nice meeting you all. My name is Juliet, and I work with Center for Integrated Research and Community Development here. We are neighbors to Creek, and Agnes is my next neighbor here in Kampala. I agree it's very important to engage communities in the activities that we'll be doing later on in August this year. Because also I think the communities need to benefit. Sorry about that. I think also the communities need to benefit from this very project. And since we are talking about the cook stoves and their direct beneficiaries, they may need to appreciate what it takes to design some of these appliances that we'll be looking at later on come August. But we might need, I don't know how it has been in the previous summits, but we might need maybe to engage a mix of community people, both men and women, different categories. Old, because the old, from my take, I think they have a lot of indigenous knowledge. They've cooked for a long time and they know what would work, and some of the experiences improve some of the products that we tend to come up later on in our innovations. I don't know what experience it has been in engaging people of different age brackets and how that maybe can benefit.
I think that's great. So also we'll address this during, after we kind of go around, but kind of what type of community members are a good mix to have. And I'll brag about Juliet and Agnes for a bit. The fact that they are two of our really excited local partners there in Kampala, and kind of the challenge that they are facing is, as you guys know, Kampala being more of an urban summit. And so right now they're thinking about what community to be working in. And I think you guys touched on it, like how to keep that balance of staying connected with the community. So we'll touch on that. Dan is here in Boston. Dan, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, I'll just add one small thing. But I agree with my cook stove comrades there in Kampala. I think another thing on the Cook Stove Summit is we're kind of at the point in the process now where we're narrowing down our projects too. And like, so I've kind of been struggling a little bit with, well, the project and the community is really tightly linked. Can you choose, like, what sequence should you go through in selection of one or the other, or do they need to come together? But we did a really great job of brainstorming a lot of different potential projects and thought about some of the communities that could be linked to those. And I think the community is a really important part of those projects too. So they have really good projects without a great community linkage, which maybe doesn't make them so suitable. We may have some projects that we weren't as excited about, but they have a really good community component that maybe we should give more attention to. That's a question for the rest of the people.
I think that's a great question, and something that IDDS summits have struggled with for years. And I think we finally have lessons learned, and we'll be addressing, well, I have a slide just on best practices on what we suggest you do to simply sequence this, because like we said, it's this ebb and flow art form. And it comes back to Pedro's question too, of who to involve when, because you don't want to leave people out, but you want to incorporate the right people at the right time and not overwhelm anyone. So thanks, Dan. That's great. And then we're lucky enough to have some folks from the PIA Co-Design Summit here in the room, and some visiting from Zambia. Welcome, Lulu. We're glad you're here. So maybe you guys want to introduce yourselves, where you're at, and any questions you have.
I can kick it off and then turn it over to the other organizers here as well. So I'm Dana. I'm one of the organizers for the PIA Co-Design Summit this year, and ours is until the end of October, so we're the earliest in the process out of everyone here, I think. And basically right now we're at the point where we have a community in mind. We haven't quite formalized that yet, but I think our summit is a little bit different because it incorporates members of the Practical Impact Alliance who are from big companies, NGOs, government agencies, social ventures, and then also local entrepreneurs we want to engage and community members. And we're lucky enough to be co-hosting with representatives from NTUC in Lusaka, and then also World Vision Zambia, who have a real presence in the community that we will end up choosing, and these are our local organizers. So some of the things we're thinking about are you know, all of the things that you have discussed, and we also really are trying to keep an eye towards the potential, while managing expectations, the potential to generate some real collaborations with local like community members, local organizations, and our PIA members. And then also the opportunity to kind of offer trainings and other ways for local community members to get ready, whether that's through CCBs that we hope to run in the community before our co-design summit, or other ideas like that. So just to set the stage, and then I'll let Lulu introduce herself.
Hi everybody, my name is Lulu Chulu. I work for National Technology Business Center in Zambia, and we are very pleased that we'll be hosting the PIA Summit this year in October. We've started earlier, as she has mentioned, and I think things are moving just fine. We have a potential community that we're going to, that we have identified that we're going to host the summit at. And we have touched base with our local partner, that is World Vision Zambia. And we are looking to do more of the groundwork when we get back home. That's sometime next week. And this is a very good forum, and I just like the question that was raised by Juliet, I think, of handling expectations of the community. And I would really like to learn more about that one, because it's something that has been bugging me as well. And, yeah, that's about it.
Saida?
Yeah, hi everybody. Behind you. Hi, so I'm Saida, I work here at D-Lab, and I'm involved in organizing this second co-design summit for PIA. I guess trying to answer the question why it's so important, from our previous experience in Ghana, community engagement is the single, maybe most important thing that that provide the experience for the participants, because everybody is obviously coming to these summits to learn, but mostly making a lasting contribution in these communities. So if the communities are not engaged, it affects everybody. So in terms of our experience so far, so last year we went to a community where the relationship was mostly with D-Lab, and we struggled after the summit in ensuring continuity of the projects, because we realized very quickly that we don't have the capacity to manage that. And so that's why we actually made sure this year to invite one of our PIA members to be a co-host, mostly motivated by the fact that we wanted to make sure that there is an organization who has a lasting relationship with the community that would really make the Co-Design Summit part of a bigger vision of this relationship with the community, and ensure that there is lasting effect after the summit happens. So it's our first experience doing it here, and definitely a great asset. Reason why we chose Zambia is the NTBC partnership. So it gives us also a partner on the ground that can help build World Vision's capacity. So the building also about the expectation is, this question about how do we communicate about continuation from the beginning with the community. That's something that's on my mind, that it's not just about the summit, it's about how the summit is the onset. It's something that should last much longer.
Mm-hmm. Great, thanks. And we'll reiterate that throughout, is the importance of thinking about IDDS as the catalyst of an innovative ecosystem, not just a one-time event. So it really helps to have those local partners set up, not just a one person, but we're really excited to actually be working with institutions and local community partners who are excited and able to carry this through. Joe, I think I saw you on the line. I don't know if you want to just quickly introduce yourself and if you have anything to add. Joe Stein is from Peace Corps, and he's going to be helping out with the PIA Code Design Summit too. I see that you're on mute.
It's Joseph from Moringa.
And we have...
There's also a Joseph at Circuit.
Oh, okay. And we also, so Joe, feel free to pop in anytime. And we have Melissa on the line as well. Melissa, did you want to introduce yourself real quick and anything that you want to add?
Hi, I'm Melissa. I am working with Saida and Dana on the Zambia Co-Design Summit. This is my first time ever being part of one of these. So I'm sitting here as a learner and looking forward to my participation.
Well, we're excited to have you, Melissa. And one last one I want to acknowledge is Ms. Deborah Tien, who is on the line, who just finished IDDS Lahore and has helped out with IDDS 2014. We're glad she's here. Debbie, do you want to share with us why communities and projects are so important, and anything about your experience so far?
Well, hello everyone, I'm Debbie. Thank you for the introduction, Share. It's been really great hearing how everyone's community scoping is going so far. Honestly, I think everyone summarized it pretty well of why it's so important. It's important because of continuity. It's important to make sure that with continuity, you do have an expectation that it's not like outsiders coming in and like making that project happen. It's all up to the community and making sure to jump in and knowing kind of like what is in to make IDDS something that, or any summit really, something that is part of a bigger vision of spurring the innovation ecosystem. So it's been great hearing what everyone has to say so far.
Awesome. Thanks, Debbie. And I might invite Debbie to kind of chime in on particular parts. I think she's got some fresh words of wisdom. So feel free to chime in at any time. And all of you, feel free to chime in. I know that took about half of our time, but I think that that was valuable. And I really wanted you all to hear from each other. First of all, to meet each other and hear kind of where everybody's at and the valuable resources we have on the line and in the room, and to utilize each other. Because you guys know a lot and have a lot of experience already. So right now what I want to do is just reiterate why it's so important. And you guys know this, but communities and projects are the core of IDDS. You guys know that IDDS exists so that we can teach the code design process along with community members and hopefully improve some livelihoods with the technologies that we create. We know some of these technologies won't go on. Some of them we hope they do and they have a long life. But at the end of the day, we want this to be a positive experience for communities and participants. And you know, at the crux of the curriculum and what we do should be and is working with our communities, again, not for them, and designing projects that are relevant for the communities and community-based, community-driven, but hopefully globally relevant, and learning how to manage those expectations with communities. There was a slide that I didn't include in here, but I think we could probably address later on, is just kind of why it's so valuable for communities and what we hear from communities of, you know, why would I want to host an IDDS if I'm not getting a project that I can immediately turn into an income generating activity afterwards. And the things that we typically hear from community members themselves and also from community partners is, one, it gets them visibility. They have visibility through the International Development Innovation Network that they didn't have before. They're tangibly meeting 50 to 70 new faces from around the globe that they haven't before. And for organizations, that's a big deal. You figure people pay big bucks to market and advertise at that level. A second reason why people are typically, communities are usually very interested is honestly for this sheer cross-cultural exchange. It sounds cheesy, but I think many of you who are from the communities know that you know, there are some cultures that aren't being promoted in mass media. And so people love to share their culture with each other and share their cultural norms, share their ways of life. And it's exciting to do that with a group who's eager to learn about it. And I think that's something that we do bring, is a group that's eager to listen empathetically and learn and work with communities. And that's really exciting to community members and households particularly. And kind of a third reason is that there is the potential, even though there might not be a project that goes to scale, there's the potential that there might be. And also that lastly, that they get the opportunity to learn alongside with us. So as opposed to most programs where we're just swooping in, having a program using the community as, you know, our stage setting, we're actually involving, or should be involving, a third of our participants should actually be from the local community in the country, so that we're actually building capacity alongside building these relationships through these hands-on projects. So for those of you who are talking about managing expectations, I think that's an important question. We like to keep those expectations low and say we're not saving the world, but here are the things that we're providing. So I'll type that up as well so that you guys have that as a resource. Just as a reminder, there are two amazing presentations where we've touched on this already before. So for those of you who were here with Laura a couple weeks ago, she went over some lessons learned on a broad level of all the lessons we have learned from different sections. And for those of you who are on the line or have seen this presentation before, you may remember that there was a list of things she recommended about communities, a list of things that we've learned about projects and teams. And so in terms of communities, I think those of you who have organized a summit before, and kind of intrinsically this might make sense as well for if you've organize any sort of community-based program or project, is that for effective community engagement to take place, the community has to be involved. That sounds obvious, but you'd be surprised at how easy it is to not involve the community as we're trying to move projects forward, we're trying to move our timeline forward. It's easy just to make decisions without a community member's voice in the room. And although that's something we talk about and value at IDDS, it's understandable that at times, internet's not there, or it's hard to get them on the line, or the leader's just not available when you go visit the town. It's very easy to just storm forward, and I want to encourage you, it's okay to pause and really incorporate those voices at the right moment. And we'll go through when that right moment is. But it makes sense, right? For effective community engagement, we want to engage the community. And so there are different ways to do this, but first and foremost, we do require that you have at least one participant on every project team, if not two. And that's good for project continuity, but also just teaching the co-creative design process. We want to keep that knowledge in the community as well. We want to catalyze this with community members who can then share it with other community members after the summit. We want to be involving local government and universities. We used to shy away from it because there's too much bureaucracy, but honestly, if you have them on your side, it's an amazing vehicle to help carry projects forward. And so depending on what makes most sense for your summit, connections that you already have, they are great stakeholders to be involving from the beginning, from this planning stage, just to be talking to at different points. And again, we'll go over one later. So we used to do kind of a repeated or extended community visits, and some of you will be doing that kind of just logistically based on where the venue was that you could get a hold of and where the community is. But honestly, the most effective summits that we've seen are ones that are hosted inside the community. And that's just for the sheer, it makes sense, right? That you are living and breathing in that community. You're learning in and with that community the entire time. Logistically, it's much simpler, but also for continuity's sake, you're focused on one community, you're focused with one partner. It helps continue those projects. And you've really just jump-started something in one place in the course of 2 to 4 weeks. Obviously, if that's not something that you can do, you can work around that. You can do extended community visits, incorporate the partners, incorporate the members. But again, our recommendation is when, as much as possible, host it in the community or as close to the community as possible. And then last but not least, a couple of you have already started doing this already, is host a CCB or some sort of hands-on workshop about 3 to 6 months before the summit. This is a great way to see who really is to introduce what IDDS is and what a crazy, fun environment, hands-on learning activity we are, because I don't know if anybody on the line has tried to explain IDDS in English or another language, but it's difficult. And so this is a good way to show who we are and what we do. It's a good way to see who in the community is really interested in this methodology and who's not. And then also to scope your projects, to start generating a list of project ideas instead of just saying, okay, what are your problems? And list them out on a piece of paper. It's a great way to actively engage the community members, for them to open up their, the creative capacity building skills and see what ideas and what resources they see around them and what projects they're interested in. And then just as a reminder, in terms of projects and teams, we did review with Laura that good project selection is critical but difficult. As you guys well know, I think Debbie can attest to that as well, and anybody who's helped scope projects before. But it is important to plan ahead, and we want ownership from the community. And as you guys know, if you want ownership, we should be incorporating community voices, certainly from the very beginning, and then establishing when they'll be a part of critical decisions later on. Take time to form the teams thoughtfully, balancing out skill sets. The IDDS Lahore team has kind of let us know, project teams should be formed no more than 2 weeks out or no less than 2 weeks out from the summit, ideally a month, so that you can have those things ready. But you are going to revisit again back at the summit, but make sure that you save time to prepare for that. And then be thinking about continuity from day one. All of you are kind of doing that. As we had the RFP process, that was something that each of you had to outline, is what your continuity plan would be, what institutions you're working with. So it's good that we're on that that point. And then just real quickly, I think some of you who were around last year, we ran a series of Google Hangouts on design facilitation, and we have 2 episodes actually. This is my favorite picture of Ben Linder. I like to show it off as much as possible. It looks very similar to what he looks like right now. Thanks, Ben. Thank you. Oh, someone take a screenshot. So if you have not seen this, if you're watching online, I encourage you pause and go watch those. For those of you who have not watched these 2 episodes and you are one of the key players in forming your projects, please watch these episodes. Ben goes over in detail how to scope your projects, how to select them. We're not going to go over all those details now because we have that recorded in not 1, but 2 sessions. And we also go over some questions. I think Pedro's on the line as well. He was on the last one. So all of those are on our organizer Hangouts page. So I'll resend that out to you. But the 2 things I do want to highlight is, 1, we did go through and we listed what are the criteria of when you're looking for what might make a good project, as communities are sharing, oh, this might be a good idea. How do you kind of take and shape and form that into a project? And so we have a whole list of criteria that we like to consider. You know, is it relevant for the community? Is it relevant globally? Is it a hands-on design challenge? Some of these are more venture-oriented, and that's okay if you're a venture summit, but none of you all are venture summits, so there might be a venture component baked into it, but we really want to make sure there is a hands-on component challenge possible, and that there is room for technical innovation there, and I think that's something that each of you are looking at how to massage in there. Is it open-ended enough for them? Is it not too closed? Is there potential for continuity and ownership? And again, is the community interested, or their partners interested? Thinking through the tangible progress that can be made at the summit and what resources are available to help develop it after. We have item resources, but what local resources are available? And then lastly, are we comfortable with it in our guts? Because if we're not, we probably shouldn't be doing it. Trust your gut. You kind of know, you kind of have a sense of what might make for a good project. We had some information in terms of portfolio. You want to generate like a list of, if you have 8 project teams, you want to generate a list of 10 projects. You want to have a few extra. We used to think that, you know, it's good to have a diversity of sectors, but what we've been realizing, what we heard from IDDS Lahore, is for most impact and better continuity, it actually helps if you can focus on one sector. This is mainly so that you can build relationships with all those different stakeholders and institutions in the field, and so that you can move these projects forward together with all of it kind of limits the amount of stakeholder meetings you have to have. And if you have that capacity, by all means go for it. But I think the impact is greater when we can kind of pick a focus. I know I'm going through this quickly, but just because I want to share quickly, and we'll continue addressing some more of your questions later. The second piece that we did review in those Google Hangouts was also in terms of framing. A lot of you have asked questions, how do we properly frame? What is too narrow? What's too big? So in terms of scope, we give guidance that, you know, you don't want it to be too broad or too short or too narrow that there's no creative space. You want there to be some flexibility that participants can pivot, and that also means being honest with community members as we talk with them. You know, this is a learning process. These projects are vehicles for learning, and we want to learn together even with the community, so we want to create that space for pivoting to be possible. You know, as you're coming up with your project statements that you're going to send out to participants, try to tell the story, make it real. You know, it always helps that we can make a connection. And there should be some sort of importance to it, right? Like, these projects aren't just for fun, but we really want to be making a difference in our sectors, hopefully. And then right here, we say problem focus, but it's also an opportunity focus as well. What we don't want to write problem statements that are so narrow that already give a solution and tell them, go design this. We want to keep the space open for creativity, that they can think through. They can go through the design process with it and think through what might be a good solution. At the same time, you don't want it so broad that they have to do a lot of brainstorming together beyond what's normal, what you have time for, to just come together on consensus. And so I guess the question on all of our minds then is, well, what is an example of a well-scoped project? I think that has been the burning question for years. So I'm going to let Ben kind of address what I would say is one of our best examples of a well-scoped project. Oh, Ben, I think you're muted.
Thanks, Cher.
Share a quick question. Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah, no problem.
Go ahead.
When we talk about problem framing, I've always wondered, why do we have a different, like the 5 different components? Why don't we use like the thing that we teach to participants, the path statement stuff? Or why don't we put them next to each other or anything? They seem kind of the same, but slightly different.
Mm-hmm. That's a good question. Ben?
I only got about half of that.
Sorry. So we teach participants how to problem frame during the IDDS curriculum, and it's kind of differently framed than we frame it here for organizers, but they're both, I think, generally the same kind of thing. So I'm just wondering if there's a reason for that, or if that's just how it is at the moment.
Well, it sounds like you're referring to specific differences, and I'm not sure which ones you have in mind. I mean, I think the philosophy is the same. It's the same folks with the same philosophy. In practice, in a sense, the way we think about problem framing is that essentially the organizers need to do the beginning of the project themselves, right? One way to think about it is we need to go out to communities, engage stakeholders, do user research, gain insights about communities, observe, ask, try, why, what is going on and so on, and ultimately come to some proposed project framing that then is framed in such a way that it can be handed over to participants to essentially do the same thing again. In other words, we do essentially the first iteration, and then project teams do the second iteration, and take it from there. If we start too broadly, as Cher was mentioning, teams generally flounder or struggle to get to across a threshold where they start to get convergence and actually are clear on the challenge that they can address for the remainder of the summit. So we're looking to bring that scope from a broad place down narrow, but still leave room for the teams to narrow it further and to figure out where they're going to go with it. So I think the answer to your question is yes and.
Sounds good. Thank you, Ben. All right. Sorry for interrupting.
No, I think that's a great suggestion, Debbie, especially for the next round, is really, and even now, just start using the path process to begin.
There's process on these slides that were shared, but not on the 2 slides that are here, but on other slides, there's more process.
Mm-hmm.
So you're not seeing everything here. Okay, so I think what we have is actually some text here that is from IDDS 2014 in Tanzania around a particular project related to avocados and to spoilage, right, where we have more production and then there is demand. And so we have this framing that was used, and I think what we'd like to do is invite people to think about what about this project framing fits with the set of framing points that we just provided. So if we were to compare what's written here to the list of suggestions for framing, what would we find out, right? And I think what you'd find is that, and people can do this exercise for themselves. If we had more time, we'd do it together now. But you try this exercise later. But I'll make some suggestions about it. One is that there's the sort of challenge part of this is well set up. There isn't a suggestion in here about what to do or what actual solution strategy to take. It says, identify an opportunity to get more value from this avocado excess, and pursue a product or venture to address the challenge. So it leaves quite open where is a team going to go with this. It doesn't say, hey, you need to make an avocado oil press and tell people what to build, right? So they get to decide for themselves what their own framing is and what the challenge should be. It also highlights a very kind of tangible and clear challenge for people to think about. So we in the past, for example, when we've asked teams to work on small scale energy, that was more of a sector in terms of the scope. If you think about the scope dimension of this, that's saying, hey, develop a small scale energy storage solution or production solution, is essentially asking a team to work on a sector and decide what the challenge is in a sector relative to a community. We actually did that before. It doesn't work well. It takes too long for a team to get to a point where they cross that threshold. And in this case, you can see in this project that tangibility and kind of concreteness is clearly there. So the opportunity for a team you can imagine a team moving very quickly on this project, of being able to engage community members about the situation and try to understand firsthand through community engagement and stakeholder interactions what's going on, and start to think about how they might pursue and frame this for themselves. On the other hand, the original set of text, while it identifies a community, it doesn't have a very strong story element. It doesn't quite bring through a more expressive component and a more emotional component. One of the things that we find is that when participants sign up for projects, because we typically give them some options and they can set priorities, is that people will be moved by projects that seem to have more clear impact. And that impact is tied in an expressive or an emotional way to a story element that one can more readily relate to. So the original framing on this doesn't have so much of that story element or a kind of sense of the scale of the impact, but Cher has just shown you a little bit more text. And so, for example, the participants did refine this problem statement, and they got a sense of the value of the avocado and when they're sold, and a sense of how much is actually wasted, and starts to give you a feeling for like, whoa, this is a lot of avocados. There's a whole avocado harvest and half of it is being wasted. And that kind of impact information, although preliminary, right, starts to give people a sense of importance and feeling the need a little bit more. And that second paragraph there, where they start to talk about the community or sort of have information from the community to pair with this project statement, starts to give a little bit of this story feeling, give a sense of who are the people, what's the scale of what's going on, how many people are involved, and the nature of the tribe and the nature of the activities that go on in those places related to other fruits and produce. But you can imagine going a little bit further on a personal story about a farmer or about a family who, on the one hand, is either lacking income or lacking nutritional food sources, might be facing various kinds of food insecurity, but on the same time are facing a crop that half of which is going to waste, right? So that one can kind of bring in a story element that strengthens the kind of understanding of the travesty of the situation, right? And make that more expressive, as well as start to talk about the impact. We start to have a little bit of pricing, a little bit of sense of scale and the percentage of loss. And one could go a little bit further and start to say things, for example, about maybe a sort of sense of the potential value lost in a crop that is there, or the scale of the nutritional need that is going unmet, and so on, and give people a little bit of feeling of the impact part of this. And the material we have here collectively does a pretty good job at getting at most of these things, and in some places could be sharpened. What we have found is to not overdo things like statistics and include in a project description. It's tempting to list several nutritional or several economic or several agricultural facts and issues that are related to this particular situation and this challenge. They exist, but they can overwhelm the description of the project, and the impact becomes too abstract, especially if it's at the expense of the emotional and more expressive story. And so we find to use a few key statistics is really powerful, but not to go too far in that direction.
Mm-hmm.
So that's a quick summary, Cher.
Yeah, no, that's helpful. And I think on that note too, it's good for design facilitators to have done that research and to know about it. So it's good to know that information, but not necessarily, you don't necessarily have to include that in that statement. And so basically what we want to say, this isn't the world's most perfect problem statement. There's always things that we can be refining, but something to note about this and kind of use it as a benchmarking example is that, if a project was too big, we could have just said, hey, farmers in Ligaruki need another income generating activity. Go for it, create something. And that would have kept it pretty big. And that's it's easy, but kind of broad to navigate. We could have kept it super teeny and said, hey, they have a lot of avocados that cost this much. Can you create an oil press? Can you create this? And so that would obviously not leave room for flexibility, but something like this was kind of a happy medium. So it is an art form. Don't feel bad. You'll always learn something new from it and how you can always improve. It's okay if it's not perfect, just go for it, have fun. So eventually they ended, maybe Debbie wants to talk about this, but I will tell you what they made in just a moment. But they made an avocado oil press, but the project actually ended up going in several different directions, which brings me to kind of our most important point that we talked about from the beginning, project continuity. When Yona or I say this, organizers glaze over and they're like, what does project continuity mean? That's such a big word. But honestly, if it helps you, just think about project sustainability, right? We all love sustainability. And at the end of the day, it's just the question, how is your project going to move forward after the summit? Some projects shouldn't move forward because they were bad projects or, it was a learning process. And that's okay. And some will probably do that. That's okay. But learning from that and why that is. But we do hope that a couple of the projects do move forward. And we want to make sure that the infrastructure is there to support that. And so that's why we're working with institutions like NTBC, like Creek and Circadoo, like our local Organic Farmers Association in Belaine. We are excited to be working with partners who are able and excited to carry forward these projects after the summit. There is some monitoring evaluation data that we follow up with the projects and learn how can we also, from IDDS perspective, how can we support those institutions as well as they support the projects. We do have, small grants, we have mentorships, both the projects and the people that are produced out of it. So in the example and the case, before I go over the best practices that we do have here and conclude with that, I will say that the avocado oil press ended up going a variety of directions. And it sometimes ends up taking twists and turns that you wouldn't even expect. But maybe Debbie might be able to speak to it better than I could. Debbie, do you want to talk about the different pathways?
Sure, I can try to outline them, but I might even forget some because
like a gazillion.
There's a lot of different directions. So just looking at this slide, I see Voca and I see, is that Pastor Emmanuel? Mm-hmm. Okay, so basically this project was really cool. What happened at the summit was they ended up designing and building, I think, 3 different versions of an avocado oil press. And before they came to avocado oil, they were definitely brainstorming very, very different ideas. Like, I think at some point I was like, let's make a cookbook because everyone likes guacamole, right? And then some people were saying, let's make an avocado spa where we use avocado for create a service or a business out of that. So it ended up becoming avocado oil. They made 3 different presses, and then it kind of took a bit of a pause as we were trying to figure out who would be the actual champion. As Cher mentioned, it is really important to try to involve the community as much as possible. One challenge with this project is people are trying to move it forward even after the summit. This is post-summit. people are trying to move it forward, and sometimes it can be hard to get in touch with certain key figures in the community. And part of my job is to try to like prod them to say, hey, people working avocado oil, have you reached out to that person yet? Have you tried again? Have you done all these things? And we finally got to the point, and this is 2014, right, when the summit happened. So it's been about 1.5 years, okay, of trying to make sure this happens. So anyway, right now it's become this venture called Abu Meru. Okay, so Abu Meru is led by Jesse. Jesse was a participant in IDDS 2014, but was actually on a different team. He was on the coffee team, but the coffee team was also Ligaruki, and Jesse is from Ligaruki. Jesse joined IDDS kind of randomly. This is a longer story that's kind of funny that we can talk about later if you're interested. But and then, so he joined later. He was not part of the formal process. And, oh no, the church bells are starting. I apologize. Let me know if it's too hard to hear me. So
Debbie is there in Arusha, for those who are unaware. She's in Arusha, Tanzania right now. Keep going, Debbie. You may have lost her. Debbie?
Oh, yeah. So Abu, can you still hear me? Oh,
yeah,
no.
Go ahead.
Okay, cool. So Jesse started a company called Abu Meru. Abu Meru's goal is to basically bring avocado oil pressing machines to like a, maybe Sherry, you should continue for now.
No, that's good. So I think if Debbie's connection was good enough, she'd probably start talking about Jesse, who ended up taking it one direction. We have some students at MIT who have worked on the project and took it another direction. And so basically the point is you could have a project start at a summit, but there's a variety of pathways it could take. It could continue in the community. It can continue with the participants of the project team, with participants who are not on the project team, with some of our consortium members and academic institutions. We have some projects that move forward through Olin's ADE program, through some of our other programs. And then obviously we have some that move through our institutional partners like NTBC and others. So there's a variety of pathways, but basically just thinking about that continuity from the beginning, being open to that. And so with that, I know we're running kind of over time, but I'll just mention these best practices, which you've hopefully been looking at right now. If I can just sum up everything that we've said, these are our best practices, and I'm happy to draw up kind of a project management table for those who are interested on not just these as a task, but what's the timeline, who's responsible for it, the suggestion of that. But basically what we suggest before an IDDS, meet with the community. If you can, as soon as possible, and you guys have seen this in our timeline, a year out, you should be meeting with the community, the actual community you're going to be working with, build that relationship. It's best to work with communities that you already have relationships with, because those projects will go forward and your relationship's going to continue after the summit. Again, these are catalytic events, not one-offs. So work with your communities that you know, build that relationship. Run a hands-on workshop. This should be done pick a community, who the local community partner will be. That could be an organic farmers association, that could be, World Vision, that could be a women's cooperative, whatever, but pick who is the champion partner organization, not just person, but organization that's going to support you in this. Run a hands-on workshop with them. And like we said, scope out who's interested, who's involved. This should be done about 3 to 6 months out from your summit. The earlier, the better, because then you can start working on your next thing. You generate a list of projects from that workshop, and then you scope those projects, because you want to look at some of those projects might not be a good fit for your IDDS. Some of them might be, and that's okay. And just being honest with people, like, here's the list, and this is the point where it goes from the community probably to your project experts on the team. If there's somebody from the community that wants to be involved and can be involved, if there's just one person, that would be great. Hopefully it's somebody who knows the landscape of the community, what resources are available, It's nice if kind of the projects or lead instructor scopes the projects and then has a one-on-one conversation with those community liaisons or the community partner and says, hey, what do you think about this? Does this make sense? Before releasing it to everybody else. That way you kind of get community buy-in. Then after you've kind of got the buy-in of your community, these kind of look good, then you want to send those projects out to participants before an IDDS. Again, no later than 2 weeks before a summit. If you can do it like a month and a half out, get those forms back in a month out from the summit, then you can coordinate the project teams, but more importantly, design facilitators know what projects they're working on. They can do the background research, especially if you only have 2 weeks to be working on this. You're going to have to be iterating fast. And so it'll help give you the confidence as a design facilitator to guide the team well. At IDDS, it's good to review the projects and teams at IDDS. It's good to have a backup list of 2 or 3 projects. As we all know, sometimes things just don't work out, and that's okay. Have those as a backup. Sometimes team members have conflicts and they want to switch. That's okay. Revisit it at the beginning and just confirm the teams. And I want to stress this, pivoting is okay. In fact, we encourage it. You're learning things through the design cycle. And this is a process of co-creation. We want to be talking with our community members and framing something that is valuable. So encourage your participants. Pivoting is okay. After an IDDS, 2 weeks later, at an IDDS, you should be completing a project report. Each participant group should be filling this. People get scared because they hear the word report, but basically this is a document to help us make sure that projects are sustainable. We use this document to give to communities, to give to funders, to give to other participants, to give to student groups who want to continue this project forward. It's helpful for them to see what's already been done, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and how to move it forward. So these are very, very important. They're due by 2 weeks after the summit. Again, if something happens, you can talk with me, we can negotiate that, but more or less it's about 2 weeks after the summit. And then lastly, after IDDS, we want to think about how the projects move forward and getting them ready. It's okay if it moves through, like we said, teams, communities. Some don't, and that's okay, and some do. And so just helping to move them forward if they do. Hopefully, I know that was a lot of information, but hopefully, if nothing else, this last slide is very helpful for you as you're thinking about how communities and partners, I think like Dan said, they're very synergistic. So knowing what to do with each when kind of helps. I think through this, we address kind of most people's questions. And if people have to go, feel free to leave because we are going over time. I'm just trying to take a look. We kind of addressed a little bit about who should be a part when, how to keep international organizers connected is something that we didn't really talk about, but it is good at your weekly meetings just to give an update to your organizers about what's going on so that they're not in the dark. Inspire them, share them pictures, talk to them about what's going on. I think we talked about how much to keep the community before the summit, how to manage expectations. The community member participant mix to have is going to depend. We'll talk more about team mixing on another call. But like we said, we want to make sure we have at least 2 community members on each team. If they're relevant to the projects, even better. Sometimes that's hard to coordinate beforehand, though. We talked about how to sequence and project continuity. Is there anything else that's kind of lingering on people's minds? Any last questions, comments, words of wisdom even that you've learned? No? Great. Andre is waving and smiling. That's good news. Well, guys, with that being said, thank you for hanging out with us together. I think this was really valuable to hear from all of you. Hopefully this has been helpful. We'll send out these notes. I'll send out a few handouts with it too. If that's relevant for you, pick and choose what tools you need. If you have any questions, Ben and I are available. And like I said, I hope you can know that you can reach out to each other through the listserv that I've been emailing out on. And feel free to ping people and be like, hey, what do you think of this? Because sometimes it's hard to get a hold of Ben or I, and maybe you might be able to more quickly get a hold of somebody else. Debbie is also an amazing resource. I don't know if she's still on the line and if she's okay with me promoting her as an amazing resource, but she is based at one of our innovation centers. She's been an organizer. She's been she hasn't been a participant yet, but she has been an organizer, and she lives there in Arusha, so she knows. She's been seeing the aftermath of these projects and what it's like, and is always coming up with great ideas of how we can be better preparing. So even the path process, that's great, Debbie. I'll probably be sending that out to you guys to take a look at as well. But I'm sure Debbie would love to talk with each of you about ways if there are certain questions you're struggling with. So thank you guys. And I hope to see you next week when we talk about curriculum magic.
Ooh. Wow. That was really nice. Thank you, Shel.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you, Agnes.
Thanks, Shel.
Debbie. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.